was a warm summer evening in a small suburban neighborhood. The sun had just begun to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. 14-year-old Marcus Johnson was enjoying his time outdoors, riding his bike along the quiet streets. He loved being outside during this time of day because everything felt calm and peaceful. The air smelled fresh, and the sound of crickets chirping filled the background. His headphones were on, playing his favorite playlist as he pedaled slowly down the road. Marcus had spent most of the afternoon at his friend's house working on a school project about space exploration. They had made good progress, and now he was heading home before it got too dark. His mother, Lisa, always reminded him to be careful when riding alone at night. "Stay safe, Marcus," she would say every time he left the house. "Keep your eyes open and don't take any shortcuts." Marcus usually followed her advice, but tonight he wasn't worried. This was their neighborhood, a place where everyone knew each other, or so he thought. Unbeknownst to Marcus, 2 police officers were patrolling the area that evening. Their names were Officer Brian Kelly and Officer Robert Sims. Both men had been on duty for several hours, responding to calls and keeping an eye out for anything unusual. Earlier that day, they had received a report about suspicious activity involving someone matching Marcus's description. A young black boy wearing a hoodie. The caller hadn't provided many details, only mentioning that the person seemed out of place near the park. It was vague information, but it was enough to make the officers extra cautious. As they drove through the neighborhood, Officer Kelly glanced at Officer Sims. "You think we should check around here?" he asked, pointing toward the street where Marcus was riding his bike. "Might as well," replied Sims with a shrug. "Better safe than sorry." The 2 officers slowed down their cruiser as they approached the corner. From a distance, they spotted Marcus riding past an alleyway. He looked like any other teenager enjoying a summer evening, but something about him caught their attention. Maybe it was the way he wore his hoodie, or maybe it was the fact that he was riding alone. Whatever it was, it triggered something in their minds, something neither of them could quite explain. Marcus didn't notice the police car at first. He was focused on navigating the bumpy pavement while humming along to the music in his ears. Just then, a stray cat darted across the street, startling him. He hit the brakes instinctively, bringing his bike to a sudden stop. As he steadied himself, he finally noticed the flashing lights behind him. Turning his head, he saw the police cruiser pulling up beside him. For a moment, Marcus froze. His heart began to race, though he tried to stay calm. He told himself there was no reason to panic. After all, he hadn't done anything wrong. Still, the sight of the police car made him uneasy. He remembered stories he'd heard from friends about run-ins with cops that didn't end well. Shaking off the thought, he took off his headphones and waited to see what the officers wanted. One of the officers leaned out of the window, his expression stern. "Hey, kid," he called out gruffly. "What are you doing around here?" Marcus swallowed hard, trying not to let his nerves show. "I'm just going home," he replied politely. "I live a few blocks away." Officer Kelly narrowed his eyes, studying Marcus carefully. There was something about the boy's demeanor that didn't sit right with him. Maybe it was the slight tremble in his voice, or the way he gripped the handlebars of his bike. Whatever it was, it made him suspicious. "Where exactly do you live?" he pressed further. Marcus hesitated for a second, thrown off by the question. Why did they care where he lived? He quickly recovered and gave them his address, hoping it would satisfy them. But instead of letting him go, the officers exchanged glances and stepped out of their car. "Get off the bike," Officer Sims ordered, sharply. Confused and growing more anxious by the second, Marcus obeyed. He placed his feet firmly on the ground and stood still, unsure of what to do next. One of the officers shone a flashlight directly into his face, blinding him momentarily. "Why do you look so nervous?" Officer Kelly asked, his tone accusatory. "You hiding something?" Marcus shook his head vigorously. "No, sir. I'm not hiding anything." But the officers weren't convinced. Their suspicions continued to grow, fueled by assumptions they didn't even realize they were making. To them, Marcus fit the profile of someone who might cause trouble. A young black boy in a hoodie riding a bike late in the evening. They failed to consider that he was simply a kid trying to get home after a long day. Then came the moment that changed everything. Marcus instinctively reached toward his backpack, intending to grab his phone and show them his ID. He figured if he could prove who he was, they'd leave him alone. But the movement startled the officers. "He's reaching for a weapon," Officer Sims shouted, panic rising in his voice. Before Marcus could react, gunfire rang out. A sharp pain shot through his arm, and he cried out, dropping to his knees. Blood began to seep through his sleeve as shock overtook his body. In that instant, Marcus realized how quickly things could spiral out of control. All he had wanted was to ride his bike home safely. But now he found himself injured and scared, surrounded by people who were supposed to protect him. Little did he know, help was closer than he imagined, and it came in the form of someone unexpected. Farther down the street, John Cena, the famous wrestler and actor, was taking a walk. He often visited this part of town to relax and clear his mind. When he heard the gunshots, he immediately sprang into action, running toward the commotion without hesitation. What he discovered when he arrived would alter the course of events forever, not just for Marcus, but for everyone involved. The sound of gunshots echoed through the quiet neighborhood, cutting through the peaceful evening like a knife. John Cena, who had been taking a leisurely stroll just moments earlier, stopped in his tracks. His heart raced as he turned toward the noise, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Without wasting a second, Cena sprinted down the street, his powerful strides eating up the distance quickly. As he rounded the corner, the scene unfolded before him. A young boy, Marcus, was on the ground, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. Two police officers stood nearby, their guns drawn, looking confused and defensive. The sight shocked Cena to his core. He didn't know what had happened, but one thing was clear. This boy needed help, and fast. Cena stepped forward, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his deep voice calm but firm. "Officer," Kelly spun around, startled by Cena's sudden appearance. When he realized who it was, his face twisted with irritation. "Stay back," he barked, pointing his gun at Cena. "This is police business." But Cena didn't flinch. Standing tall and unafraid, he locked eyes with the officer. "Police business?" he repeated, his tone sharp. "That kid is hurt. You need to call an ambulance now." For a moment, no one moved. The officers seemed unsure of how to handle the situation. They weren't used to having someone like Cena, a towering figure with a commanding presence, challenge them so directly. Meanwhile, Marcus lay on the ground, tears streaming down his face as he struggled to cope with the pain. Cena knelt beside him, ignoring the officers for the time being. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "It's okay. I'm here. Help is coming." Marcus looked up at Cena, his wide eyes filled with fear and confusion. He didn't recognize the man at first, but there was something comforting about his voice. It was steady and kind, a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding him. While Cena focused on calming Marcus, Officer Sims tried to regain control of the situation. "You don't understand," he said defensively, lowering his gun slightly. He reached for something in his bag. "We thought he had a weapon." Cena glanced over his shoulder, his expression hardening. "A weapon? He's a kid on a bike. Does that look like a weapon to you?" He gestured toward Marcus, who was clearly unarmed and terrified. Before the officers could respond, another car screeched to a halt nearby. Lisa Johnson, Marcus's mother, jumped out and ran toward the scene. She had been growing worried when her son didn't come home on time, so she decided to go look for him. What she found broke her heart. "No, Marcus!" she screamed, rushing to his side. Tears streamed down her face as she dropped to her knees beside him. "What happened? Who did this to you?" Lisa cradled her son's head in her lap, rocking him gently as she tried to comfort him. Her presence seemed to ease some of Marcus's fear, though he was still visibly shaken. Cena stood up, blocking the officers from getting any closer. "This woman needs to be with her son," Cena said firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument. The officers hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances. They knew they were in trouble. The situation had spiraled out of control, and now they were facing not only an injured teenager and his distraught mother, but also a celebrity witness who wasn't afraid to speak up. By now, the commotion had drawn attention from the neighbors. People began stepping outside their homes, curious about what was happening. Some stood silently, watching from a distance, while others pulled out their phones to record the scene. One neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Harper, approached cautiously. "Well, everything all right?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Do you need me to call 911? "We already called," Cena replied, nodding toward the officers. "But if you haven't, please do. This boy needs medical attention right away." Mrs. Harper nodded and hurried back inside to make the call. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens could be heard growing louder. An ambulance and additional police units arrived on the scene, adding to the tension. Paramedics rushed to Marcus's side, assessing his injury and preparing to transport him to the hospital. Lisa refused to leave her son's side, holding his hand tightly as they loaded him onto a stretcher. Cena stayed close, offering words of encouragement. "You're going to be okay, Marcus," he said, giving the boy a small smile. "Your mom's here, and we're going to make sure you get the help you need." Meanwhile, the supervising officer who arrived with the backup units began asking questions. He introduced himself as Lieutenant Harris and took charge of the situation. Turning to Cena, he asked, "Can you tell me what happened here?" Cena recounted everything he had witnessed, from hearing the gunshots to finding Marcus injured on the ground. He didn't hold back, making it clear that the officer's actions were unjustified. "I don't know what led up to the shooting," Cena admitted, "but I can tell you this much. The way they treated that boy was wrong. He didn't deserve to get shot." Lieutenant Harris listened intently, jotting down notes. He then turned to Officers Kelly and Sims, both of whom looked increasingly uncomfortable. "We'll need your full statements," he told them, his tone serious. As the investigation began, Lisa finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She looked at Cena, gratitude shining in her tear-filled eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If you hadn't been here—" Cena shook his head, cutting her off gently. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We're not done. This isn't right, and we're going to fight to make sure something like this never happens again." News of the incident spread quickly thanks to the videos captured by neighbors. Footage of Cena intervening went viral almost overnight, sparking outrage across social media. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. A young boy shot by police officers and a wrestling icon stepping in to defend him. Back at the hospital, Marcus was treated for his injury. The bullet had grazed his arm, causing significant bleeding but no permanent damage. Doctors assured Lisa that he would recover physically, though the emotional toll of the experience was harder to predict. As word of the shooting reached the public, calls for justice grew louder. Protesters gathered outside the police station, demanding accountability for Officers Kelly and Sims. Community leaders joined forces with civil rights organizations, vowing to push for reform. Cena remained deeply involved, using his platform to amplify the message. In interviews and on social media, he spoke passionately about the need for change. "This isn't just about one incident," he emphasized. "It's about addressing systemic issues that allow these things to happen. We have to do better, for Marcus, for his family, and for every child who deserves to feel safe in their own neighborhood." For Marcus and his mother, life would never be the same. But with Cena's support, and the support of countless others, they found strength in knowing they weren't alone. Together, they vowed to turn this tragedy into a catalyst for change, determined to create a future where no child had to endure what Marcus had gone through. And as Marcus lay in his hospital bed that night, exhausted but surrounded by love, he couldn't help but think about the man who had shown up when he needed it most. John Cena might have been an unexpected hero, but to Marcus, he was proof that even in the darkest moments, hope could shine through. The days following the shooting were a whirlwind for Marcus and his family. The hospital became their temporary home as doctors monitored Marcus's recovery. Though the bullet had only grazed his arm, the wound was deep enough to leave a scar, a permanent reminder of the night everything changed. Lisa stayed by her son's side day and night, barely leaving even to eat or shower. She couldn't shake the image of Marcus lying on the ground, bleeding and scared, from her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, it replayed like a nightmare. John Cena visited them often, bringing not just words of encouragement but also practical support. He helped Lisa connect with a civil rights attorney named Mr. Daniels, who specialized in cases involving police misconduct. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone," Cena told Lisa during one of his visits. "Mr. Daniels is one of the best. He'll make sure your voice is heard." Lisa nodded gratefully, though her heart was heavy. "I just want justice. For Marcus," she said softly. "He didn't deserve any of this." Cena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're going to get it," he promised. "This isn't just about Marcus anymore. It's about sending a message that what happened here can't be ignored." While Lisa focused on supporting Marcus, Cena took action in other ways. He reached out to influential figures in the entertainment industry, rallying support for the cause. Celebrities began speaking out on social media, sharing Marcus's story and calling for accountability. Hashtags like "Chew Justice for Marcus" and "End Police Brutality" trended nationwide, drawing attention to the case. People from all walks of life joined the conversation, demanding answers and change. Meanwhile, the officers involved, Brian Kelly and Robert Sims, found themselves at the center of a storm. They were suspended pending an investigation, but public pressure mounted daily. News outlets covered every detail of the incident, airing interviews with witnesses and experts. Footage of Cena stepping in to protect Marcus continued to circulate online, fueling outrage and calls for reform. Critics argued that the officers' actions were driven by racial bias, pointing out how quickly they escalated the situation without proper justification. Lieutenant Harris, the supervising officer overseeing the investigation, faced immense scrutiny. He held press conferences to assure the public that the matter would be handled fairly. "We are committed to transparency," he stated firmly. "Every piece of evidence will be examined thoroughly, and those responsible will be held accountable." But promises weren't enough for many people. Protesters gathered outside the police station, holding signs that read, "Protect our kids," and "No justice, no peace." Community leaders organized rallies, urging citizens to demand systemic changes within law enforcement. One such leader was Pastor James, a respected figure in the neighborhood. He stood before a crowd of hundreds, his voice booming with conviction. "This isn't just about one boy," Pastor James declared. "It's about every child who feels unsafe because of the color of their skin. We cannot stand by and let fear rule our streets. We must come together and demand better." Back at the hospital, Marcus tried to focus on healing. Physical therapy sessions helped him regain strength in his injured arm. But emotionally, he struggled. Nightmares plagued his sleep, and he found himself constantly looking over his shoulder whenever he went outside. Lisa noticed the toll it was taking on him and made sure he saw a counselor regularly. The counselor, a kind woman named Ms. Carter, worked patiently with Marcus to help him process his feelings. "You're allowed to feel angry or scared," Ms. Carter told him gently during one session. "What happened to you was wrong, and it's okay to take time to heal." Marcus nodded, though he still felt uneasy. "Do you think things will ever get better?" he asked hesitantly. "They already are," Ms. Carter replied with a warm smile. "Look at all the people standing up for you. You're not alone in this fight." As weeks passed, the legal battle intensified. Mr. Daniels filed a lawsuit against officers Kelly and Sims, accusing them of excessive force and racial profiling. Evidence poured in, from witness testimonies to video footage captured by neighbors. Cena played a key role in gathering resources and raising awareness, ensuring the case stayed in the spotlight. He even attended court hearings alongside Lisa and Marcus, showing his unwavering support. The courtroom was packed during the preliminary hearings, with reporters and activists filling every seat. When Marcus testified, his voice trembled as he recounted the events of that fateful night. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," he said, his eyes fixed on the judge. "I was just riding my bike home." His words resonated deeply with everyone present. Even some of the jurors wiped away tears as they listened to his account. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered to show solidarity, Chants of "We believe you, Marcus" echoed through the air, lifting the spirits of the Johnson family. Despite the overwhelming support, the road ahead remained challenging. Defense attorneys for the officers argued that their clients acted out of perceived danger, insisting they had followed protocol. But their claims were met with skepticism, especially after expert witnesses debunked their arguments. Of firearms, specialists testified that there was no evidence Marcus had posed any threat, further undermining the officers' credibility. Throughout it all, Cena remained a steadfast ally. He used his platform to push for broader reforms, advocating for mandatory training programs to address implicit bias among law enforcement officers. "It's not enough to punish those responsible," he said during a televised interview. "We need to prevent these situations from happening in the first place. That starts with education and accountability." His efforts inspired others to take action. Schools across the country began incorporating lessons on racial equality and justice into their curriculums. Local governments allocated funds to improve community police relations, hosting town hall meetings where residents could voice their concerns directly to authorities. Slowly but surely, progress began to take shape. For Marcus, seeing so many people rally behind him gave him hope. He started feeling more confident, even venturing outside again, under the watchful eye of his mother and friends. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch with Cena, he finally smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Thank you for everything," Marcus said, looking up at Cena. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Cena chuckled, ruffling Marcus's hair playfully. "You don't have to thank me, buddy. I'm just glad I was there when you needed me." As the sun set on another day, Marcus realized something important. Heroes come in all forms. Sometimes they wear capes and wrestle in arenas. Other times, they're everyday people standing up for what's right. And sometimes they're both. Though the journey toward justice was far from over, Marcus knew he wasn't walking it alone. With his family, his community, and unexpected allies like John Cena by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The weeks turned into months, and the legal battle surrounding Marcus's case continued to unfold. Each court session brought new developments, keeping the story in the headlines and the community on edge. For Marcus and his family, life was a mix of hope and frustration. While they were grateful for the outpouring of support, the constant reminders of that night weighed heavily on them. Lisa Johnson did her best to keep things normal for Marcus. She encouraged him to return to school, hoping it would help him regain a sense of routine. At first, Marcus hesitated. The thought of facing his classmates after everything that had happened made him anxious. What if they treated him differently? What if they asked questions he wasn't ready to answer? But with gentle encouragement from his mother and Ms. Carter, his counselor Marcus decided to give it a try. On his first day back, Marcus walked into the classroom feeling nervous. His arm was still healing, and he wore a bandage as a reminder of what he'd been through. To his surprise, his classmates greeted him warmly. Some of them had followed the news coverage and knew about the shooting. Instead of treating him like a victim, they treated him like a hero. "You're brave, Marcus," one of his friends said during lunch. "Not everyone would have handled it the way you did." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He didn't see himself as brave. He was just a kid who wanted to ride his bike home without being shot. But hearing those words gave him a small sense of pride. Maybe, he thought, he could use this experience to make a difference. John Cena stayed involved, attending court hearings whenever his schedule allowed. He also worked behind the scenes to ensure the case received maximum exposure. One day he arranged for Marcus and his family to meet with lawmakers in Washington, D.C. It was part of an effort to push for national reforms in policing policies. When they arrived at the Capitol building, Marcus couldn't believe where he was. He'd only ever seen it on TV or in pictures. Inside, they met with Senator Laura Hayes, a passionate advocate for criminal justice reform. She listened intently as Lisa recounted their ordeal, nodding sympathetically. "What happened to your son is unacceptable," Senator Hayes said firmly. "We need stronger laws to hold officers accountable when they abuse their power." Cena added his perspective. emphasizing the importance of training programs to address implicit bias. These issues run deep, he explained. It's not enough to punish bad actors after the fact. We have to teach officers how to recognize and overcome their own prejudices. Senator Hayes agreed, promising to introduce legislation aimed at improving police-community relations. By the end of the meeting, Marcus felt hopeful. For the first time, he realized that his story could lead to real change, not just for him, but for others like him. Back home, the protests showed no signs of slowing down. Every weekend, people gathered in parks and streets holding rallies and marches. Some carried signs bearing Marcus's name. Others chanted slogans calling for justice. Celebrities joined the movement using their platforms to amplify the message. Musicians wrote songs inspired by Marcus's courage, while filmmakers began working on documentaries about the case. One evening, Cena attended a rally near the neighborhood where the shooting occurred. Standing on a makeshift stage, he addressed the crowd, his voice filled with emotion. "This isn't just about one boy," he said, echoing Pastor James's earlier words. "It's about every child who deserves to grow up in a world where they feel safe. We owe it to Marcus and to ourselves to keep fighting until we see real change." The crowd erupted in applause, cheering loudly. Lisa stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. She never imagined her family would become the center of such a powerful movement, but she was proud of how far they'd come. "We're not backing down," she told a reporter afterward. "Not until we get justice." As the trial approached its final stages, tensions ran high. Both sides presented their closing arguments, leaving the jury to deliberate. The courtroom was packed once again, with reporters and activists anxiously awaiting the verdict. Outside, hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and praying for a fair outcome. Finally, after days of deliberation, the jury reached a decision. When the judge announced the verdict, guilty on all counts, a wave of relief washed over the room. Lisa buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Marcus sat quietly, processing the news. Justice had been served, but the scars remained. The guilty verdict sent shockwaves across the country. Law enforcement agencies faced renewed calls for accountability, while advocacy groups celebrated the win as a step forward. Officers Kelly and Sims were sentenced to prison terms, though many argued the punishment didn't fully reflect the harm they caused. Still, the ruling marked a turning point, a rare instance where the system held police officers accountable for their actions. In Audi, the aftermath, the focus shifted toward implementing reforms. Senator Hayes introduced the Police Accountability Act, which included measures to improve training, increase transparency, and establish independent oversight boards. Communities rallied around the bill, urging Congress to pass it quickly. Cena testified before lawmakers, sharing his experiences and urging them to act decisively. For Marcus, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could be. He threw himself into schoolwork, determined to excel despite everything he'd been through. He also started speaking at local events, sharing his story and encouraging others to stand up against injustice. "I'm not special," he often said. "I'm just a kid who got lucky because someone like John Cena cared enough to help." His words resonated deeply, inspiring countless young people to find their voices. Teachers reported seeing a shift in their students' attitudes, with more kids speaking out about issues affecting their communities. Marcus became a symbol of resilience, proof that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through. Lisa, too, found purpose in the chaos. She co-founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting families affected by police violence. Named after Marcus, the foundation provided resources like counseling services, legal aid, and educational workshops. It quickly gained traction, attracting donations and volunteers from across the nation. As for Cena, he remained a steadfast ally, continuing to advocate for systemic change. He traveled the country, meeting with grassroots organizations and amplifying their efforts. "This is bigger than me," he often said. "It's about creating a future where no child has to go through what Marcus did." One crisp autumn afternoon, Marcus returned to the park where the shooting had occurred. It was a place he avoided for months, haunted by memories of that night. But now he felt different, stronger. He stood by the bench where Cena had knelt beside him, remembering how much had changed since then. A group of kids played nearby, laughing and chasing each other. Marcus smiled, watching them enjoy themselves without a care in the world. For a moment, he let himself imagine a future where all children could live free from fear, a future shaped by the lessons learned from his story. Turning to leave, Marcus paused and glanced back at the park one last time. Though the road ahead would always carry challenges, he knew he wasn't walking it alone. With his family, his community, and unexpected allies like John Cena standing beside him, he was ready to face whatever came next. The months following the guilty verdict brought a mix of emotions for Marcus and his family. While justice had been served in the courtroom, the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. Marcus's arm healed slowly, but the emotional wounds took longer to mend. Nightmares still visited him occasionally, and he often found himself glancing over his shoulder when walking alone. Yet amidst the lingering pain, there was also growth. Marcus began to see himself not just as a victim, but as someone who could inspire change. Lisa noticed the shift in her son. He became more outspoken, sharing his thoughts and feelings openly with her and others. At first, it was small things, talking about how grateful he was for the support they'd received or expressing frustration about the slow pace of reforms. But soon Marcus started taking bigger steps. He joined a youth group focused on social justice, attending meetings and brainstorming ways to make their community safer. For the first time since the shooting, Marcus felt like he had a purpose beyond surviving. John Cena continued to play an important role in Marcus's journey. Though his wrestling schedule kept him busy, he made time to check in regularly. Sometimes, he'd call Lisa just to see how they were doing. Other times he'd visit in person, bringing gifts or simply sitting down to talk. On one such visit, Cena surprised Marcus with tickets to a wrestling event. "I thought you might enjoy seeing what I do," Cena said with a grin, handing over the tickets. "And maybe someday, you'll tell me what you think of it." Marcus smiled shyly, touched by the gesture. He had never been to a wrestling match before, and the idea of watching Cena perform live excited him. The night of the event, Marcus and his mother sat in the front row cheering alongside thousands of fans. As Cena stepped into the ring, the crowd erupted in applause. Marcus watched in awe, realizing how much influence his unexpected hero truly had. After the match, Cena invited them backstage, where Marcus got to meet some of his favorite wrestlers. It was a night he would never forget. Meanwhile, the movement sparked by Marcus's case gained momentum. The Police Accountability Act, championed by Senator Laura Hayes, passed through Congress after months of debate. Communities celebrated the victory, seeing it as a long-overdue step toward reform. Training programs designed to address implicit bias were implemented nationwide, and independent oversight boards were established to investigate complaints against officers. While critics argued that the changes didn't go far enough, supporters hailed it as progress. Cena remained vocal in his advocacy, using every opportunity to push for further improvements. He partnered with organizations like the NAACP and Black Lives Matter, participating in campaigns aimed at educating the public about racial injustice. In interviews, he spoke candidly about his own experiences growing up in a world where stereotypes often overshadowed truth. "I've seen firsthand how fear can cloud judgment," he said during one televised appearance. "We have to work harder to break down those barriers and build trust between communities and law enforcement." His words resonated with people from all walks of life. Teachers incorporated stories like Marcus's into their lesson plans, encouraging students to think critically about fairness and equality. Artists painted murals honoring Marcus's courage, turning blank walls into vibrant reminders of hope. Even musicians contributed, releasing songs inspired by the resilience of a young boy who refused to stay silent. Back in Marcus's neighborhood, the sense of unity grew stronger. Neighbors came together to organize events promoting peace and understanding. One Saturday morning, the community held a Day of Healing festival in the park where the shooting had occurred. Booths were set up offering free resources, everything from mental health counseling to job training programs. Local artists performed music and poetry, creating a space for reflection and connection. Marcus attended the event with his family, feeling proud to see so many people working toward a better future. During the festival, Pastor James delivered a heartfelt speech. Standing on a small stage, he addressed the crowd, his voice filled with passion. Today, we honor Marcus, not just for what he endured, but for the strength he showed in rising above it. Let this be a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, light can always shine through. The audience erupted in applause, and Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't realized how much his story meant to others until now. As people approached him afterward, thanking him for inspiring them, he realized something profound. His voice mattered. Encouraged by the response, Marcus decided to take his message even further. With Cena's help, he began speaking at larger events, addressing audiences in schools, churches, and community centers. His speeches weren't polished or rehearsed. They were raw and honest, reflecting the struggles and triumphs of a boy, learning to navigate a complex world. "I'm not special," he often said. "I'm just someone who got lucky because people cared enough to help me. If we all care a little more, we can make things better for everyone." His words struck a chord with listeners, especially young people. Students wrote letters thanking him for giving them hope. Teachers reported seeing a noticeable shift in their classrooms, with kids becoming more empathetic and willing to stand up for what was right. Marcus's foundation, co-founded by Lisa, expanded its reach, providing scholarships and mentorship programs to underserved youth. It became a beacon of hope, proving that even in the face of adversity, positive change was possible. As winter approached, Marcus celebrated his 15th birthday. The occasion was bittersweet. He was grateful to have reached another milestone, but memories of the past year lingered. To mark the day, Cena organized a surprise party at a local recreation center. Friends, family, and neighbors gathered to celebrate, filling the room with laughter and warmth. A cake decorated with wrestling motifs stood at the center of the table, complete with a figurine of Cena lifting a championship belt. When Marcus walked in and saw everyone waiting for him, his eyes widened in disbelief. "You did all this for me?" he asked, looking at Cena. Cena smiled warmly. "You deserve it, buddy. You've come so far." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he hugged his mother tightly. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly happy. The party was a reminder that despite everything he'd been through, love and kindness still surrounded him. As the year drew to a close, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that fateful summer evening. What began as a terrifying ordeal had transformed into a powerful movement, one that transcended borders and brought people together. Though challenges remained, Marcus knew he wasn't alone in facing them. With his family, his community, and allies like John Cena standing beside him, he felt ready to keep pushing forward. One snowy afternoon, Marcus returned to the park once more. This time he didn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt a quiet sense of peace. The bench where Cena had knelt beside him was covered in snow, but Marcus could still picture the scene vividly. He thought about the journey he'd taken, from being a scared boy lying on the ground to becoming a symbol of hope for countless others. Standing there, Marcus whispered softly to himself, "This is just the beginning." He turned and walked away, his footsteps leaving faint imprints in the snow. Though the road ahead would always carry challenges, Marcus knew he had the strength to face them. And with each step, he carried the promise of a brighter future, not just for himself, but for everyone who believed in the power of change. As spring returned to the neighborhood, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The world around him seemed to awaken with fresh possibilities, much like he had over the past year. Trees blossomed, flowers bloomed, and the air carried a crispness that hinted at new beginnings. For Marcus, this season symbolized growth, not just in nature but in his own life. The foundation named after him continued to thrive, reaching more families than ever before. Lisa worked tirelessly alongside volunteers, ensuring that every child who walked through their doors felt supported and valued. Counseling sessions helped kids process trauma, while workshops taught them skills to navigate challenges. Scholarships, funded by donations, allowed students to pursue dreams they once thought were out of reach. Marcus took pride in knowing that his story inspired others to dream bigger and fight harder. At school, Marcus became known as a leader among his peers. He joined the debate team, using his voice to tackle issues like racial inequality and police reform. His arguments were thoughtful and well-researched, earning him respect from teachers and classmates alike. During one competition, Marcus delivered a speech about the importance of accountability and compassion in society. "We can't change the past," he said, his voice steady and confident, "but we can shape the future. Together, we have the power to make things better." His words resonated deeply, not only with the judges but also with those watching online. Videos of his speeches went viral, drawing attention from news outlets and activists. People praised his courage and maturity, marveling at how far he'd come since the night that changed everything. Marcus didn't see himself as extraordinary. He was just a boy doing what he believed was right. But to others, he represented hope, a reminder that even in the face of injustice, resilience could spark meaningful change. John Cena remained a constant presence in Marcus's life, offering guidance and encouragement whenever needed. Their bond had grown stronger over time, evolving into something akin to family. Cena often joked that Marcus was turning him into a professional speaker, thanks to all the events they attended together. But beneath the humor lay genuine admiration. Cena saw in Marcus qualities he admired most: strength, kindness, and an unwavering commitment to making the world a better place. One weekend, Cena invited Marcus and Lisa to join him at a charity event in New York City. It was a star-studded affair with celebrities and influencers coming together to raise funds for social justice initiatives. When Cena introduced Marcus to the crowd, the room erupted in applause. "This young man has taught me more than I could ever teach him," Cena said, his voice filled with emotion. "He reminds us that no matter who you are or where you come from, your voice matters." Marcus blushed under the spotlight but managed to smile. As he looked out at the sea of faces, he realized how many people were rooting for him. Strangers approached him afterward, sharing stories of how his journey had inspired them to take action in their own lives. A teacher told him she started a program at her school to address bullying. A college student said she switched her major to criminal justice because of his advocacy. Each story reinforced Marcus's belief that small actions could lead to big changes. Back home, the community celebrated its progress with another festival, this time themed around unity and resilience. Booths showcased local art, music, and food, creating a vibrant tapestry of culture and creativity. Children ran around laughing, their joy infectious. Pastor James led a prayer circle, thanking everyone for their hard work and dedication. "We've come so far," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "But let's not stop here. Let's keep building bridges and breaking down walls." Marcus stood beside Cena during the closing ceremony, holding a microphone as hundreds of people gathered to listen. "I never thought my story would mean anything to anyone," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "But now I know it does. And if my story can help just one person feel less alone, then everything I went through was worth it." The crowd cheered, moved by his honesty. Tears glistened in Lisa's eyes as she watched her son speak with such conviction. Cena placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, silently letting him know he was proud. In that moment, Marcus understood that his journey wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. As the months passed, Marcus found joy in the little things. Riding his bike through the neighborhood no longer filled him with fear. Instead, it reminded him of his freedom. He loved feeling the wind against his face and the sun warming his skin. Friends joined him on rides, and together they explored hidden paths and secret shortcuts. Life felt lighter, brighter, and full of promise. At home, Lisa decorated the walls with photos and mementos from the past year. There were pictures of Marcus speaking at rallies, meeting lawmakers, and standing beside Cena at events. Awards and certificates hung proudly next to drawings made by children involved in the foundation. Every item told a piece of their story, a testament to how far they'd come and how much they'd overcome. Though challenges still existed, Marcus faced them with determination. He knew the fight for justice was far from over, but he also knew he wasn't alone. Communities across the country continued to push for reforms, holding marches and organizing fundraisers. Lawmakers listened, passing laws aimed at increasing transparency and accountability within law enforcement. Slowly but surely, change was taking root. On a quiet evening, Marcus sat on the porch with Cena, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. They talked about the future, what they hoped to achieve, and how they could continue making a difference. "You've already done so much," Cena said, leaning back in his chair. "What's next for you?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "I want to keep helping people," he said simply. "Maybe someday I'll run for office or start my own organization. I don't know yet, but whatever I do, I want it to matter." Cena smiled, nodding in agreement. "It will. You've got a heart bigger than most adults I know. Whatever you choose, you'll leave a mark." As darkness fell and stars began to twinkle in the sky, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. He had faced unimaginable pain and emerged stronger because of it. With his family, his community, and allies like John Cena standing beside him, he knew he could handle whatever came next. The road ahead might be uncertain, but Marcus was ready to walk it, one step at a time. And as he looked up at the vast expanse of stars above, Marcus whispered softly to himself, "Thank you." He wasn't sure who he was thanking exactly. Maybe the universe, maybe the people who had supported him, or maybe even himself for finding the strength to keep going. Whoever it was, he felt grateful. Grateful for second chances, for unexpected heroes, and for the belief that tomorrow could always be better than today. Marcus Johnson was no longer just a boy who survived a terrible night. He was a beacon of hope, proof that even in the darkest moments light could shine through, and when it did, it could illuminate the path toward a brighter future.